The Sahara Desert is not merely a place on a map. It is a living, breathing entity of destruction. Spanning 3.6 million square miles across northern Africa, it is an ocean of silence and fire. To the uninitiated, it looks like a barren wasteland of yellow sand and blue sky. But to those who dare to step into its heart, it reveals its true nature. It is a furnace where the daytime temperatures can soar past 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook proteins and boil the fluid in your cells. It is a freezer where the night air drops to near freezing, shattering the body's ability to regulate its own warmth. It is a landscape of shifting dunes that erase footprints in seconds, destroying any hope of retracing one's path. It is beautiful, yes, but it is a beauty that kills without hesitation or remorse. In April of 1994, an Italian man named Mauro Prosperi walked into this furnace, confident in his ability to conquer it. 9 days later, he would emerge as a ghost, a man who had walked through the valley of the shadow of death and survived only by consuming the most unthinkable things and defying the very limits of human physiology. This is the comprehensive story of his descent into hell and his miraculous return. To understand why a man would voluntarily subject himself to such torture, we must first understand the event that drove him there. It is called the Marathon des Sables, or the Marathon of the Sands. In the world of ultra-running, it is spoken of in hushed tones. It is not just a race, it is widely considered the toughest foot race on Earth. It is a 6-day, grueling odyssey covering approximately 155 miles through the Moroccan Sahara. That is the equivalent of running 6 regular marathons back-to-back over dunes the size of skyscrapers and rocky plateaus that shred shoes to ribbons. But the distance is only half the challenge. The Marathon des Sables is a self-sufficiency race. This means that competitors must carry everything they need to survive on their backs for the entire week. Food, sleeping gear, emergency flares, snakebite kits, everything except water and a tent is the responsibility of the runner. If you run out of food on day 3, you starve for the remaining 3 days. It is a test of logistics as much as it is a test of endurance. Mauro Prosperi was not a naive tourist. He was 39 years old, a police officer from Sicily, and a highly accomplished athlete. He was a pentathlete who had competed in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. He was disciplined, tough, and mentally hardened. He had prepared for the Sahara. He had trained his body to run on little water. He had optimized his backpack to weigh exactly the right amount. He went into the desert not just to participate, but to win. And for the first 3 days of the 1994 race, everything went according to plan. Mauro was flying. He navigated the rocky terrain and the soft sand with the grace of a professional. He was in the top tier of runners, moving with speed and efficiency. He felt strong, he felt invincible. But the desert has a way of humbling the arrogant, and on the 4th day, the Sahara decided to show Mauro who was really in charge. The 4th stage was the longest and most difficult leg of the race. The heat was oppressive, shimmering off the ground in waves that distorted the horizon. As Mauro ran, he noticed a change in the atmosphere. The sky, usually a piercing, relentless blue, began to bruise. It turned a strange, sickly shade of yellow, then deepened into a violent purple. The air grew heavy and still, charged with static electricity. Then the wind began. It started as a whisper, shifting the sand around his ankles, but within minutes it escalated into a roar. A shamal, a violent desert sandstorm, was descending upon the runners. In the Marathon des Sables, the rules are clear and absolute. If a sandstorm hits, you stop. You find cover, you wait for the organizers to find you or for the storm to pass. To keep moving is suicide because the sand erases all landmarks. But Mauro Prosperi made a calculation. He was feeling good. He had momentum. He looked at the wall of sand approaching and thought he could outrun it. He thought he could push through to the next checkpoint before visibility dropped to zero. It was a decision born of competitive drive, but it would prove to be the most catastrophic mistake of his life. The storm did not pass quickly. It swallowed him whole. The wind screamed at speeds of 50 miles per hour, carrying millions tons of sand. The sand in the Sahara is not like beach sand. It is fine, like talcum powder, and when driven by gale-force winds, it acts like sandpaper on the skin. It filled Mauro's eyes, his nose, his mouth. It stung his exposed legs like thousands of tiny needles. He wrapped a scarf around his face to breathe, but the dust choked him. Visibility dropped to less than a few feet. The world dissolved into a swirling orange chaos. Mauro kept moving, driven by adrenaline, convinced that he was heading in the right direction. He ran for 8 hours straight, battling the wind, blind to the fact that the storm was pushing him imperceptibly off course. He wasn't running towards the finish line anymore. He was running into the deep, empty quarter of the desert. When the wind finally died down that evening, the silence that followed was deafening. The air cleared, and Mauro climbed to the top of a massive dune, expecting to see the lights of a camp, or the flare of another runner, or at least a trail marker. He looked north, south, east, and west. There was nothing. Just an endless rolling ocean of dunes extending to the horizon in every direction. The landscape had been scrubbed clean. There were no footprints. There were no tire tracks. He was completely, utterly alone. He checked his supplies. He had a few energy bars, some dehydrated food, a sleeping bag, a knife, a compass, and, most critically, half a bottle of water. The first night was a battle against denial. He was convinced that the race organizers would find him in the morning. He lit a small fire with dry scrub brush, hoping the smoke would be a signal. He curled up in the sand, shivering as the temperature plummeted, and waited. But morning came, and the horizon remained empty. The sun rose, transforming from a source of light into a weapon. As the heat of the day built up, the reality of his situation began to set in. He was lost in one of the most hostile environments on the planet, and his water was almost gone. Physiologically, the human body is a water machine. Every chemical reaction that keeps us alive requires fluid. In the desert heat, the body attempts to cool itself by sweating. A human can sweat out liters of water in an hour. When that water isn't replaced, the blood begins to thicken. It becomes like sludge, making it harder for the heart to pump oxygen to the brain. The brain begins to shrink as it loses fluid, pulling away from the skull, causing blinding headaches. Confusion sets in, then hallucinations, then organ failure. You knew this. He knew he had hours, maybe a day, before the dehydration became critical. He adopted a strategy of movement. He would walk in the cool of the morning and evening and seek shade during the blistering midday hours. By the second day, his water bottle was dry. He was now in a fight for his life. He remembered a survival technique he had learned in his military training, a technique that is repulsive to the civilized mind but essential for the dying: drinking urine. Urine is mostly water, but it carries waste products that the body is trying to expel. In a survival situation, recycling it can buy you a little time, but it is a law of diminishing returns. Mauro urinated into his spare bottle. He let it settle, then forced himself to drink it. It was warm and salty, but it was wet. It kept his mouth moist. But as the days went on and his body became more dehydrated, his urine ceased to be a pale liquid. It turned dark orange, then brown, thick with toxins and uric acid. It began to poison him, damaging his kidneys, but he had no other source of fluid.
On the third day, a shimmer appeared on the horizon. It wasn't a mirage, it was a structure. Hope surged through Mauro's battered body. He ran towards it, his legs heavy, his lungs burning. It was a marabat, a shrine. In the middle of the desert, the local Bedouin tribes build these small white-domed tombs to honor Muslim holy men. They are sacred places, often stocked with offerings of food or water for travelers. Mauro burst into the shrine, expecting salvation. It was empty. There was no food, there was no water, just the dusty remains of a long-dead saint in a wooden coffin. He collapsed in the shade of the shrine, crushed by despair. But as he lay there, staring up at the wooden rafters of the roof, he saw movement. Shadows flitted in the darkness above him. He focused his blurred vision. Bats. Hundreds of desert bats were nesting in the ceiling of the shrine. To a normal person, they were vermin. To Mauro Prosperi, starving and dying of thirst, they were angels of mercy. They were wet sacks of blood and protein. The hunger that takes over a starving man is a primal force. It